Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B. Today, Ben and I are going to be discussing the 2023 Sean Durkin film, The Iron Claw, because it's just a happy, wonderful, lovely family film. Ben, your thoughts? Sorry.
Okay, let me gather myself after that amazing introduction to The Iron Claw. So my brother-in-law, Cameron, he had mentioned it via text and said, hey, he felt like it was one of the best films he had seen from last year. I don't know if I'd quite put it that, but I'd say it's in the upper crust of films from 2023. I didn't consider it a really deep year for movies, but I appreciated this one. My challenge with it is that it's just so dense. Like if you start reading the real story of the Von Erich brothers and their father, this probably would have made a more interesting miniseries to me. Mainly because the film condenses the events that in reality were spread over probably about a 10 to 15 year window, is actually when this stuff took place. And in the movie, it's like a 4-year window or if that. And I sort of felt hurried in that way, but we'll get into this. I do want your initial impression of the picture.
So this is one of those interesting kind of movies to me where there's nothing that's done absolutely spectacular where I walk away going, oh my goodness, like the production values were great. The dialogue was amazing. The music was amazing. But it was one of those where everything was done just really well, where it was almost in the background where I could focus on the characters. I could focus on the story. And this is not a big, there's no spectacle. There's no craziness that needed any of these wild camera angles or, huge CGI moments. It really was just a character piece. And it hits. I mean, it really just tugs at you, pushes you. Laura walked away from this and she was like, well, now I'm depressed after the end of it. And she's just like I didn't know how she was like, I need to watch puppies of some sort on YouTube to get over this, because this is a hard, heavy hitting film. And you definitely are correct where, it's a lot more dense in either the novel or what really happened. Because I believe there's even another brother that didn't even talk about, like not the one that passed, much younger, the eldest brother, but even a brother in between that I think
there might be. I'm not super. I read some, because I wanted to get a better sense of the real timeline of events. I don't remember I came across that or not, but yeah, it is a heavy hitting piece. It's not as depressing to me as like $1 Million Baby that just doesn't really have any sort of like redemptive ending to it at all. I don't want to really play spoiler on this too much because I feel like people should watch this film just to get a sense of like kind of the darker side of wrestling, but it's really I don't even want to chalk it all up to like wrestling being why certain things took place. I think it'd be easy to kind of look at it through that lens. It definitely does a good job of showing you the physical toll of professional wrestling. We grew up for the longest time just thinking this stuff was just completely fake because yes, the matches are fixed as far as who wins and loses. And when they look like they're punching each other and it's more of a slap. Other than that, the falls they take are brutal. Yeah.
And they hurt themselves regularly.
Yes. And I want to put this in perspective. Hulk Hogan has had something like close to 30 back surgeries, spinal surgeries. And they're all a direct result of professional wrestling. That's because that ring is not soft. And in fact, if you get to the highest levels of wrestling, which is WWE, the ring is the hardest ring there is. There's no give. It's plywood, and then I wouldn't even call them springs. They're like the springs you'd have on the suspension in your car. So they don't give. So that impact again and again and again and again. Yeah, these guys go through severe amounts of pain and then get hooked on pain pills and
everything else,
other drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So
or walk away with just debilitating injuries that make them have to leave. Yeah.
There's a documentary from the late 90s, early 2000s called Beyond the Mat. I remember it had pretty decent theatrical run, and it kind of pulled the lid off the dark side of wrestling. With, I think Jake the Snake Roberts was in it, and he's battled addiction throughout his career, and it kind of exposed a lot of that. And the shininess was off of professional wrestling after this. This is very much in line with that.
With what's real. And I would say for those people who maybe don't like professional wrestling, this movie's not really about that. Much like many of the stories we talk about, good stories, while this is, a semi-biography kind of, based off of real life kind of things, honestly, it's more of a character family driven story that you could pull it out into any type of, athleticism event for the most part. Like, because there are some, like, obviously there's problems with the NFL. I'm sure there's, issues with the NBA and other things where the toll on the body does this. Now, obviously wrestling, because we all think it's fake, like you're talking about, this kind of is an eye opening, but it really is not about that. That's not, I wouldn't say secondary, but not the primary focus of that is how this family interacts with each other. Laura afterwards too, we were talking and I think she hit the nail on the head for me. She goes, this is one of the scariest films that she's seen in a while. Not so much because it's horror, but because this is reality. Like, this is probably happening right now. Exactly what just transpired in the film that we just watched. He goes, there's probably dozens of families out there right now going through this exact thing. And she goes, that's what scares me, because it doesn't pull punches at all in its themes that it's trying to get across, or how it portrays certain characters and failures of certain characters. But this can be reality. I mean, obviously it was reality, it's based off of true events.
You have substance abuse, you have mental illness, you have, debilitating just injuries via accidents. And then you have this obsessive father that is just driving all of this common narrative of his own unfulfilled promise. And it just becomes this really catastrophic cocktail. It almost had to be based on a true story, because even movies don't usually go this far as what they will put a main character through. In a traditional story build script, the lead character, your protagonist, would go through about half of this, of what he actually endures. I'm kind of glad I watched it at the end of the day, so that I could just stay quiet and then go to bed. How does anybody wake up the next day from these events and just carry on?
Yeah, exactly.
Like how?
How do you move forward? This does not take over everything that you are, that you think about, that you do. Yeah. This is not the happy family fun movie at all that I joked about at the beginning. This is,
we have to inject some levity into this because it is a really heavy. Yeah. Well, if you have not seen this, is a super heavy movie. Mm-hmm. If there's a heavier film from last year, let me know what it was, because this seems like the one. I do want to get into some performance discussion with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hats off to Zac Efron for just ultimate commitment to the role, especially physically. Although I will say, if you go look at Kevin, like real photos of him, Efron's looks even more jacked than the real guy. Now, the real guy, this is kind of my gripe with some of the casting, is the brothers were like 6'2" plus.
Yeah.
And you have Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White playing like the two main brothers, and they're like 5'8", 5'9". They even make it a point to mention that Kevin's 6'2", and I'm just like, So, but some people were like, wait, is that Zac Efron? Like, his face looks all weird. And yeah, he did have jaw surgery or something a couple years ago. He had some sort of accident, but he's wearing additional prosthetics as well that make him look really, it's like, wait, that's Zac. And he turns in a good performance.
Excellent. Yeah.
I don't know if it was quite where it needed to be for him to like get a nomination.
No.
For an Oscar.
Thinking about it, this is one of those where I don't think this character runs the gamut of a lot of stuff, because kind of like Damon played in the CIA one that the name escapes me at the moment, where he's very one note or unemotional in a lot of ways. Watching Zac's character in this, he's definitely very unsure of himself. for a lot of it, like except when he's in with his brothers, there's some joy and levity and things of that sort. But when he's anywhere else, there is a lot of very neutral, very downplayed, very kind of, again, playing that unsure, insecure kind of nature. And that is very reserved, and that comes across very reserved. And that's kind of, not in the same vein where in Matt Damon's case, where he was very calculating and he was very unemotional about things, which I will still contest. That was a great performance by Damon, even though to our eye, it feels very wooden. Matt Damon is a huge proponent of emotion. Like, I mean, you watch anything else, he emotes with the best of them. He's one of the greatest actors we have right now, but while I won't put Zac up there with him, I will say it definitely is harder to play that more reserved, especially if you look at any of his other work. This is out of character for him. This is not his type. And so I like that he's branching out. I like that he's building his repertoire of, look, I can do dramatic roles. I can do the harder acting work. And so this could lead to some better roles. I know he's also looking to kind of get out of what he's been doing in the past. And I think this is kind of a stepping stone. This showed me a lot. I mean, not that I'm in any position to hire him for anything, but, for me, I'd be like, oh, hey, look, you're growing as an actor. Let's see what you can do next. Maybe you can get something that could get an Oscar nom.
To me, it was kind of a double-edged sword. He gave the character that innocence especially towards the beginning, and kind of naivete. I thought that was really good. I totally bought that. I guess the character, as he evolved and kind of encounters disaster, when he does emote the handful of times, I guess I was looking for a little bit more. I'm being kind of judgy here. I felt like if those moments, if those would have really landed, that he might have been looking at a nom, but it was a crowded field anyway. Yeah. So like, I don't know. No
matter what, even if he did land those, I still would have given the Oscar to Killian. Hands down.
Oh yeah, nobody. This is more of a discussion of like earning the nom, which is a big deal to achieve that.
I will say that I did feel, while I really like Jeremy Allen White, I do feel he was semi underused or not used to his potential. I've seen him in The Bear. I've seen a little bit of Shameless. He's absolutely fantastic and definitely can hold his own. And I don't know if it was just thrown in because he's kind of big right now or wanted to do a movie or what was going on, but kind of felt like it was just a throw in and then really wasn't used very well,
Yeah. And, that was another one. Obviously I mentioned the height thing because that Carrie, was a Olympic level. Was it discus?
Yeah. Discus.
He was throwing discus. Discus throwers are like, I don't know, 6'4", 6'5". Like it just, it didn't work for me seeing him throwing the discus around like near the middle part of the movie. But you get over it, and obviously he's delivering a good performance. The problem is they don't give the character enough time. They don't cut to that character frequently enough to really sell it, that character's kind of descent. Like you're just not with him enough. You're with Zac playing Kevin more.
Yeah.
And or you're
with
yeah.
I mean, Mike got more time than Carrie did. And so it was one of those, it's like, and it's hard because obviously it's already a 2-hour movie, 2.5 hour movie. I mean, it's already a longer movie. And so you need to make cuts somewhere, which makes sense. And so it's one of those of like, you got to make your choices on, who you're going to focus on. And this was definitely kind of the focus of This Is Kevin's story. Again, going back, hand it off to Zac. I mean, the fact that like at least half his scenes are he's shirtless, the fact that he had to stay in that kind of shape for most of the shooting.
Yeah,
he's
impressive. Really lean.
Oh my goodness. Like, I mean, cause he's got almost no water weight on him. And like, that's tough. There's a reason why they shoot all the shirtless scenes at the same time when you peak. So that way you don't have to maintain.
Yeah, you don't look like that for more than a few days. Usually, it's impossible to maintain that. Our culture is just like freaking horrible at making people think that they like can work out enough to look around, to like walk around looking like that all day. It's like, no, it's not going to happen
without a nice regimen of steroids and a bunch of personal trainers and chefs and all that stuff. Plus going on a water strike pretty regularly.
Oh my goodness. He probably should have, if he had time, he probably should have entered a amateur bodybuilding show just to see where he'd place.
Well, so you laugh because when there was a couple of moments where like they were like doing stuff for posing, not really posing, but like kind of doing the that kind of stuff, and I just could go back to Pumping Iron and Arnold going, the small guys always keep the arms today. You gotta bring them out, bring it out.
Show them the whole thing. Show them the whole thing. The guy wants to hide it. You should bring it out to show them the whole thing. Yeah,
that's all I could think. So like, yeah, there were moments.
I loved that wrestling montage though, when everything was going really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the brothers were all wrestling together. That was really, really a cool sequence. And you could tell that all the actors had put a ton of time in the ring for real.
Yeah, for learning. Yeah.
The commitment level to make this stuff look the way it needed to. And yeah, Zac was jumping off stuff, and like he put his body through it for this film.
He did. Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
They all really did. So I got to ask, what were your thoughts on the Ric Flair interview?
Terrible.
Yes. I was
like awful.
This was the worst.
Like this is who you cast to play Ric Flair? Really? It was bad. It was bad. And that scene, those scenes lost so much based on that miscasting.
Yeah.
It could have been so much better. The casting director should be ashamed of themselves. And maybe they got outvoted by somebody. It's possible the casting director had
nothing
actor A ready to go, and the director or producer came swooping in and it's like, no, we've got this guy. No, it was awful. It was awful. Like he didn't sound like him. His speech patterns didn't sound like him. He didn't really even look like him. It just didn't make sense.
No. And there are obviously ways you could have done that entire fight sequence or even talking sequence differently. I mean, I really don't feel like the lead up conversation where he was getting interviewed that you even really needed that. Like you already knew Ric Flair was the heavyweight champion.
Yeah, but I mean, Flair was known for his interview skills.
And then maybe use the actual interview, like, because
you could have just had him wrestling in from behind and close up and stuff. Yeah, with the wig. Yeah, that would have been a creative choice that I'm sure they probably considered. Yeah, he came out and I'm like, wait, what?
Well, and then he opened his mouth and started talking, and I was like, this is terrible. This is absolute trash.
That's not the Nature Boy. It's not. It's not. It's like the Walmart version of Ric Flair. They brought in for that.
The blue light special.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was cool to see Maura Tierney. I hadn't seen her in anything. I used to watch news radio a lot, and then she was in Liar Liar and stuff, but I hadn't really seen her in anything in a long time. And I thought she did a nice job.
Yeah, which is fantastic because it was also a version of the Claw in Liar Liar.
Yeah, the Claw.
The Claw.
But then we got Holt,
who looked fantastic in that first opening sequence.
Dude, he was lean.
Yeah,
he was lean. Yeah,
I was like,
I'm a big fan of Holt. Dating all the way back to Fight Club, and then with was it Mindhunters?
Mindhunter. Yeah, he's really good in that. He's fantastic.
Yeah, and shame on Netflix for not giving Venture and Company the third season that we all wanted for Mindhunter. But yeah, Holt was great.
I will say my only problem was I just kind of kept wanting him to go, his name was Robert Paulson, But he was fantastic in this. Like, just played to his strengths of what I've seen him before, of how he's acted. Like, I don't think he was too out of his depth from what he's done before. Like, it was very similar, but he definitely went farther, and he definitely, stretch is not the right word because I haven't seen him enough stuff, but he definitely got into the part and knew where to take the character and where to kind of build that character into, to kind of have this weird relationship with him, much like what his sons did,
I actually credit the writing, and Durkin wrote this as well as directed. I credit him with writing Fritz von Erich because he feels like a real guy. At first, he just seems like singular purpose, and like you kind of don't like him. But then they inject these moments where like he is super flawed as a human being, but the scenes with him and his wife, like he really does love his wife, and there is like still a spark there between them, even after they've been married for decades. And so this guy feels like a real guy. Yeah. And they could have easily made him a one-dimensional caricature that you just hated his guts. And that's not really what they did. They gave you a more well-rounded look at Fritz and you still were like, man, this guy's got issues. But at the end of the day, he still felt human. And that scene at the end with him and Tierney in kind of the dining room area was like, wow. And then, he just sits down and is like, yep.
Yeah, it definitely hits. There's a lot that goes on in this movie that just hits those emotional beats correctly, that kind of makes you think, but also, again, like can see, not both sides is not the right word I'm trying to say, but kind of can see why these people still followed him, why his sons didn't just outright leave him immediately when they could, where they have this bond, like, because he was strict, but he also kind of pushed that camaraderie of the, pushing them to be better or making them to do stuff. He just had a twisted sense of it. I mean, obviously, with a little bit more thought or openness, Mike could have been very successful in a lot of different ways, but kept trying to push him into the physical aspects of things.
Yeah, and that's the saddest.
Yeah.
By the way, that one scene near the end of the film, and I'm not going to give it away, basically took my breath away.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, really? Yeah. And I was like applauding Durkin for the creative decision. Yeah. I was like, that's incredible. I don't know if another director would have done this. This was bold. This is bold stuff. And this is risk taking in filmmaking to shoot that scene and put it in there.
Because it does catch you by surprise. It's very different from the rest of the film. It just didn't take me out of it at all, but it definitely was very much a left turn, exit. Like, we're going to go and off here for a little bit. But I mean, I feel almost you need some of that, because even how this movie ends, you need something like that to kind of at least ground you or to help stop the bleeding in some form or fashion. Yeah,
I think the audience is going to want that.
Yeah.
It's going to need that by that point. But it totally surprised me. It was a delightful surprise. It kind of allowed me to keep watching the film, because it was just like, man, I feel like I'm getting hit over the head.
Yeah. I like it that it's there, because for me, the ending didn't hit as much.
No.
Some of it was the kids were a little rough on the acting. And the dialogue wasn't quite there. I think I understood what he's trying to get across, what he's trying to do, but it just didn't work for me. Then we joked that no one could catch a football to save their lives, except for the pregnant mother. She was the first one to catch the football out of all of them. The rest of them, just, Butterfingers.
I'm telling you, man, those final shoot days, you're just wanting to get the thing done. You're just no, that looks pretty good. I mean, heck, it's not as bad as the extras in Dark Knight Rises, the guy that just falls over for no reason, even though he's 10 feet away from Batman.
Hey, man, we get it done. Get it done.
Yeah. Now, I could tell that the budget was a little bit less in this film. There were some creative decisions they made that saved money. Where Carrie's fighting in the WWF, and it's just playing
the actual
on the
footage.
TV. It's and then some other ways that they kind of broke bad news was felt like a lower budget movie. I don't remember exactly what the 15 million estimate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and the box office was about 45 million worldwide.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
See, it didn't look like it was 15 million.
No,
I thought it looked like a $30 or $40 million movie.
And you're definitely probably getting a couple of these actors either on spec or
yeah, you have to. I bet Zac took a massive pay cut.
Yeah.
To star in this. Yeah, I mean, it did great.
Yeah.
And I predict you're going to start to see more movies like this, just in general. So,
do you mean like the real story stuff, or do you just mean the smaller budget films? Yeah.
The budget, yeah. Yeah, I think we're coming out of the era of the massive mega budget stuff. You'll still have a handful of blockbuster movies made every year, but Marvel's pulling back because they have to, because this stuff's not making the money. And this is a prime example. $15 million estimate or investment, sorry.
Yeah.
And you come close to tripling your money. And I did have a decent marketing campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And this is evidence, I believe, that even though it was a smaller theatrical release, that the fact that it was in theaters for a time entices people to watch it once it's on the streamer. And I just read an article probably from a year ago, where the head of Paramount Pictures had that exact same philosophy. And I used to, by the way, his name is Brian Robbins. Mm-hmm. And I used to get his espresso every morning on Norbit. He a double shot macchiato or something like that is what he would get. But super nice guy. But he is now the head of Paramount Pictures, and he's a big believer in saying, hey, these films need theatrical releases because they perform better once they're on the streamers. Because people even if they didn't go to the theater, they remember, oh yeah, that was in the theater. It brings validity,
or in my case where I go, oh, I could have spent $12, $15, $18 to see in the theater, but hey, I now get to see it for free, quote unquote, with my monthly subscription, And so
it's exclusive to Max right now. We should mention that.
So that's, which is nice, where it's one of those things of on my side of things, I could have gone to the theater and spent money on this, but now I don't have to because I'm already spending money and I can watch it from the comfort of my own home.
And this wasn't a movie that needed to be seen on a massive screen. It just wasn't. It's a character piece, it's drama. So.
No big spectacle. It was one of those where you need to just sit and kind of think for a little bit afterwards and not get shooed out by the theater staff wanting to pick up all the spilled popcorn.
Oh, yeah, right. It's time for you to go.
Time for you to go. Stop watching the credits. Nobody watches the credits.
It's interesting. This was shot, even though it's $15 million, they shot on film.
Really? I mean, yep. I wonder if that...
Ariflex with Panavision Primo lenses. I
wonder if they were trying to get some of that regular grain or, make it have a feel. Because it didn't really feel like it was shot in the 70s through the 90s or, early 90s or whatever. They didn't do anything to it like Winning Time did to their... Maybe
they felt like they could save money not trying to do crazy stuff in post-production with a digital image and trying to age it more make it look like a period piece, and just said, well, why don't we just shoot 35 and just do a regular traditional color grade on it. I couldn't really tell. If I had to have guessed, I would have said it was shot on an Arri camera or red. Yeah. I think some of that stuff does have heavy grain on it. Some of the stuff in the wrestling ring, I think, is a little grainier.
I think so, but it wasn't overused.
No,
it was definitely
no. So yeah, it's back to OG. OG stuff. And the black and white opening reminded me of Raging Bull.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what he was homaging. It felt like the beginning of Raging Bull. So
it did. It was very much. I will say, going back to kind of what you're saying, I feel like it's definitely a very good thing that we're going to go, hopefully, to these smaller films. Maybe because we're going to these smaller budgeted films, we could take more risks, and, we'll have some terrible movies, but we'll have some great movies that we wouldn't have gotten before. I read a really good article that talked about that we are in the realm of the mid movie, but basically no one's really taking chances. These are high budget films. They look great. They're not bad. They're good, but they're not great. And they're the biggest problem is great takes risks. And when you try to go for great, you also have bad. But right now we're kind of in this midpoint where everything's kind of yeah, that was good.
I think it feels like maybe the way I view the 1950s cinema, or earlier 60s. There's some good stuff in the 60s too, but yeah, we're not in a golden age of really good cinema.
No,
I hope they do that, because I think you're right. I think there's stories out there to be told, and that's really what it's about. Is let's get back to actual storytelling.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend the Iron Claw to folks that haven't checked this out. I think it's well worth a watch, and it's incredible what
they can do. Definitely want to see some Zac Efron growth of a little bit different role.
Well, you got any final thoughts before I wrap us up?
No, but definitely watch puppy videos afterwards before bed, because you're going to need it.
Or if you,
otherwise you're going to get nightmares.
Right, or watch it with your dog, and then
you're
going to want attention from your dog afterwards.
Right away.
This is a heavy piece of cinema for sure.
Exactly.
Well, so we appreciate everybody tuning in to another episode of Cinema A to B as we discussed the Iron Claw. Again, it's available streaming right now on Max exclusively. For how much longer, I don't know. I'm sure they'll eventually release it to another streaming platform, or if you just want to go buy it. But yeah, you can catch us every Monday. We will give you another episode on a movie or streaming series that we've chosen. We've got some requests still hanging out there. There's a backlog of them. We'll eventually get through everything. But Thanks again for listening to us chat. We hope you have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.